Coffee, and today we're going to talk about Add9 chords. What is an Add9 chord? It's that uncle that just shows up and says, I'm going to live with y'all now. Kind of is, because an Add9 chord is basically, it's a triad. So you got your 1, your 3, and your 5, and you're just adding the 9th to it. So we're just going to jump right into this thing. Today I'm going to take you through some voicings that are very common. Some of them you probably already know and don't even realize it. And then I'm going to show you some voicings that maybe are not so common. I'll give you a couple little exercises and even a very familiar song that has a ton of Add9 chords in it. So let's just jump right into this. And Add9, we're going to start with C Add9. You probably learned this if you learned to play a G chord this way, right? Which we've talked about this a million times. I'm not even going to spell it out for you, but it's kind of the Wonderwall G, right? That whole thing, right? Well, this C Add9 chord, it has a D added to it. Well, why is it called an Add9? Well, I'm going to tell you. So whenever you're looking at chord names, it's really, really simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Basically, you just take a C major scale, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The very next note, if we kept going, would be that D again, because we're just starting over. So the 9 and the 2 are the same thing. But when you see a chord symbol with Add9, what they're wanting from you is for you to add, in this case, a D note, or the 2nd or the 9th note, but it's the 9th because they really wanted an octave above the roots. And the reason that's important is because it sounds a little different than this versus, right? It's just a different sound. There's a little more rub when that D is closer to the C in that lower octave, right? So the 9th chord has that specificity to it. Now, caveat on that, it has been my experience as a guitar player that a lot of times we see symbols on a page and we have to interpret that in a way that makes the most sense. And that's why I'm going to give you several different chord grips for this. So if this is a C Add9, you're going to have the middle finger on the 3rd fret of the A string, okay? Index finger on the 2nd fret of the D. We're going to have an open G string, and then we're going to have our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the B, and then pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E. This is C Add9. Now here's another grip. This is really cool. This is an A Add9 here. A couple schools of thought on this one here. I'm going to give it to you the way that I typically do it. If you do all the strings open except for the low E, you're going to have your index finger on the 2nd fret of the D, your pinky on the 4th fret of the G, and then your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the B, and the high E is open. Sounds like this. That's nice. You can also do it with your index finger laying down on the 2nd fret and just don't play the high E. So you just have your index straight across here and either your ring or your pinky on the G string, probably my ring. And then here's another grip. This is an E Add9. So this is going to be middle finger on the 2nd fret of the A. Pinky is going to be on the 4th fret of the D. And then your index finger is going to be on the 1st fret of the G. And then your E and your B are open. Sounds like this. And then let's just go ahead and do a couple more here. Here's a D Add9. Remember, you want that 1, 3, the 5, and we're just adding the 9. So we need that major 3rd and the 2nd rubbing up against each other. This one you kind of have to bar. Okay, you're going to have your index finger on the 2nd fret of the G, the B, and the high E, open D string. And then you're going to take your pinky. I guess you could take your ring finger if you just want to, or maybe if you got your pinky stretched up here. But I would just use my pinky on the 5th fret of the B. Sounds nice. Now here's an interesting one. This is a G Add9, and we're going to do this guy right here. This is going to be with your ring finger on the low E of the 3rd fret. Index finger is going to be on the 2nd fret of the A. You're going to have an open D, okay? And then on the G string, you're going to be on the 2nd fret with your middle finger. And then your pinky is going to be on the 3rd fret of the B. Not playing the high E. Now, those are all open position grips, but those first the first 4 that I showed you, you can throw a bar on it. Maybe not on that D. I don't know. Let me see. Probably. that would be hurtful. But you can throw a bar on the A shape, on the E shape, and actually, believe it or not, on this C shape, and we'll get to that one in a second. But let me give you this E shape one. So if I wanted to do, back to this G add 9 here. If I wanted to do that with the bar chord, and I'm going to show you a song here in a second where that exact shape comes into play. Okay, I would do it like this. Now I know what you're saying. That's stretchy. It is. And again, whenever you find yourself in a stretchy moment like that, if your elbow is too far out this way, it's going to hurt, probably be impossible. But if you kind of bring that old elbow in, check your thumb positioning, make sure you're not causing unnecessary pain, you'll find a way to make it. And there it is. So I got my index finger across the 3rd fret from the low E to the high E. I got my ring finger here on the 5th fret of the A. I got my pinky, and I would definitely place my pinky next, is on the 7th fret of the D, and then I've got my middle finger here on the 4th fret of the G. I know it's stretchy, but you can do it if you mess with it just for a little bit. Now let's go ahead and do one more, and we'll get way up here. Keep it G. And so we're going to do this A shape that we did just a second ago, but now we're going to do it way up here. And I'm going to show you a song that uses this here in just a second, okay? So you got your index finger on the 10th fret from the A string all the way to the high E. Your middle finger is going to be on the 12th fret of the D. Pinky is going to be on the 14th fret of the G string, and then your ring finger is going to be on the 12th fret of the B. Sounds like this. Why the add 9? It's a beautiful sound. And what's really cool is that, if you put a little gain on it, I'm going to switch this Bad Cat tube to the EF86. There's something about the way that 9 and that major third kind of rub together. It kind of sticks out, and it to me, it creates a rub and a tension that sounds really cool, melodic. It's almost like a very natural chorus effect, right? And in fact, the first time that I remember, I remember seeing this in, the chord book that, my mom had in her old guitar when I first picked it up and started playing, that had stuff like Tom Dooley and, Where Have All the Flowers Gone, and, Go Tell Aunt Rhody, that kind of stuff. And occasionally I would see this add 9, but the first time that I heard this and I went and I found out what chord it was, and I went, wow, that's really cool. It was in Little Wing, where there's that moment where you got the, like that little moment right there. Well, what is that? Let me switch back here so you can hear it nice and clean. Or cleaner. That little moment right there is, I'm basically making an F shape. Okay, and so we're going to make this F shape here and slide it up to the 5th fret. So I've got my index finger laying across the 5th fret. And even though I'm not, well, I guess you don't have to lay it across. You can actually just put it on the 5th fret of the B. But you could put it on the E string as well, too, even though you're going to cover that up. If that feels better, that's fine. Either which way, index finger's on the B string of the 5th fret. Your middle finger is going to be on the 6th fret of the G. And then your ring finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the D. And your pinky is going to be on the 7th fret of the high E. And that's an A add 9, and then slide that whole thing down, built on the 3rd fret. So again, index on the 3rd fret of the D, middle on the 4th fret of the G, ring on the 5th fret of the D, and then pinky on the 5th fret of the high E. And then down here to this F add 9. Index finger on the 1st fret of the B, middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G, ring finger on the 3rd fret of the D, and then pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E. It's rattling stuff. I like it. So that's pretty cool. That's that add 9 sound. It's melodic. It doesn't get in the way of the chord, being overtly a major sound. It's almost like kind of the beginning of a little bit of chord melody just kind of being inserted in there. And it's the kind of thing that it also, to me, in my ear, I think of a lot of 80s and maybe even early 90s music that used that grip. And in fact, one song that comes to mind instantly, and I'm going to show you, I got a couple little exercises to give you just as something to kind of noodle around with. It's something I made up that would get these chords in your hands. But the first song that I remember like really as a kid going, oh, whoa, that's got those big stretchy chords in it, was Purple Rain, right? I want to show you that. And if I can remember it in my stream of consciousness, I want to show you something that's a little more like from that kind of 90s, you know, kind of, you know, that post-grunge kind of nu metal thing. And a little caveat on that, you could look at those as suspended seconds too, but most often or not, people think of those as power chords that have a ninth added to it. But I'll get to that in a second. The Purple Rain chords, and this is kind of a cool, this is a really specific grip here. This first, so this is a B flat add 9. So what would be the ninth in B flat? Well, if I count up just using the B flat major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the next note in that, so if I just kept going, would be that C, right? Just like the second note was C. It's the same thing, right? So that's why this grip is a B flat over D, add 9. I used to play it like this, or even like this, or like this. But later I learned this is the right way. So what we got going on here, and we did a Chords and Coffee with Tosh Farrant a while back, and we sort of accidentally taught this, and I thought it would be good to lift that out of that moment. In fact, if you want to see that, here's what the thumbnail to that looks like. Go check that video out. It's somewhere around this time frame. I'll put it right here. Okay. Anyway, Jordan's behind the camera looking at me going, man, you're making more work for me. I love you, Jordan. So this B flat, add 9 over D, it's really simple to make. You're going to have your index finger on the first fret of the high E, first fret of the B, and then you're going to have your pinky, and there's a reason why here in just a second, not your ring finger, but your pinky on the G string of the third fret, and then an open D. The reason why it's your pinky is the next chord is this. This is G minor 11. We'll do a whole thing on 11 chords for another Chords and Coffee. But what we've got right here is you leave everything exactly where it was. Index finger on the high E of the first fret and the B, little mini bar, and then your pinky on the third fret of the G, that open D, and then you're going to put your ring finger on the third fret of the low E, holding down that G. Now your ring finger, because it's at an angle, should mute that A string just on accident. It sounds like this. Now we get to the whole stretchy pants here. You got to have some elastic fingers for that. Or just play an electric guitar. It's a lot easier on electric than it is acoustic. Now this is going to be F add 9. There's another way to do it. I'll give you that here in just a second. If you're like, Nate, I love you, but that ain't happening in my lifetime. Well, hold on. I'll give it to you in a different way, but first let's do this. You've got your index finger on the first fret from low E to high E. You're going to have your middle finger on the second fret of the G. You're going to have your ring finger on the third fret of the A. Your pinky is going to be on the fifth fret of the D. This whole stretchy McStretcherton sounds like this. Again, elbow placement. Believe it or not, it's actually easier to play when you're standing up too. So depending on how you have your guitar strap set. But there's that. Now if you didn't want to do it like that, you could also do it this way. And this way, you know, since we're here, then this, that makes sense too. I would not be mad at that. And this is pretty easy. Let me give it to you. You got your index finger again on the high E and the B of the first fret. Open G. And then now, your ring finger is going to be on the third fret of the A. Your pinky is going to be on the third fret of the D. And if you can muster it, put your thumb, or the knuckle of your thumb, on the first fret of the low E. If you can't muster it and you got a bass player, let the bass player do it. You know, don't put your spoon in his chili. Right? And that would also be an F add 9 because we've got this G notes with this F. Right? Remember, the ninth and the second are the same thing. It just depends on where they're at in terms of, is it in the same octave as the root, or is it an octave above, right? And then now, there ain't nothing but to do it. We come down here to this E flat add 9. that's going to be index finger on the 6th fret, straight across from A to high E. You're going to have your middle finger on the 8th fret of the D. Pinky is going to be on the 10th fret of the G, and then your ring finger is going to be on the B string of the 8th fret. So that's Purple Rain there for you. And I find when I'm playing that, I kind of make a target note of that index finger and then build these 3 little guys right underneath it, stacked almost like in whole step stair steps, if that makes sense. So they're a whole step apart, 6th fret, 8th fret, 10th fret, and then my ring finger and my index finger lay down sort of behind it. I hope that made sense. But that's Purple Rain. And you know what the hardest part for me is playing that chord is dampening these lower strings. But do you hear how those intervals rubbing together like that, it just makes this natural chorus that just sounds so good. Now you throw a chorus pedal on there, make sure your guitar is in tune. Throw a chorus pedal on there, it sounds really watery and really cool. And while we're in that zone, let me give you these shapes right here. Like I just told you on that E flat, building that like this, and then the rest of the fingers sort of following suit after. You can make just that chord, like let's do it on a C for example. Index finger on the 3rd fret of the A, middle finger on the 5th fret of the D, and then your pinky is going to be on the 7th fret of the D. And that should already sound kind of familiar from like the 90s era kind of rock stuff. And if I just went up to the D, so just take the whole thing up a whole step. So 5th on the A string, 7th on the D, pinky's on the 9th of the G. Now just take the whole thing up another whole step, why not? And let's do a C, but this time let's have a low E string ringing plus the high E and the B, and you've got index finger on the 7th fret of the A, middle finger is on the 9th fret of the D, and then on the G string we're on the 11th fret, and it sounds amazing. Listen to it. In that particular context, you can actually hit all those open strings together and it sounds actually pretty cool. So that whole Add9 or power chord sus2, either which way you want to think about those particular grips, is really cool. And it adds a specific flavor, and there's a, in that particular execution of that sound, it's got kind of a dark quality to me. It's kind of, maybe it's just kind of, you know, sort of a child of the 90s anyway, and hearing that sound, it's reminiscent of that rock during that time. But 9 chords don't have to be moody. In fact, I think they're beautiful. In fact, I'll even go so far to say this, is that if you're playing like on a, you know, Sunday morning or something, and you're just wanting to spice up the, you know, the usual suspects, the 1, the 5, 6, 4 kind of progression, or anything like that. If you will insert a grip that's got that Add9 in it, it could make a major difference. Let me give you a couple of quick exercises here, just something fun to kind of work on. Let's see. So this first one, this is kind of what I played here as the intro. This is going to be kind of a pretty thing. Let me flip this here. I'm going to roll the gain back just a skosh here. And then what we're going to do is, I'm going to give you this. This is an E Add9. Now this sounds more complicated than it is. This is an E6 Add9. And then you're going to go to an A Add9. And I'm voicing this just slightly different. And in fact, I might even throw down, this may be sort of like an A6 Add9, because I'm going to grab this F sharp here. And then I'm going to go to a C sharp minor, and then to a B, and then I might do a B7, like that. So what are these grips? This is going to be like that E Add9 that I gave you just a second ago, index finger on the 1st fret of the G, pinky on the 4th fret of the D, middle finger on the 2nd fret of the A, play them all. And And then for this E6 add 9, this is a beautiful chord. Low E is open, middle finger is going to be on the 4th fret of the A, pinky is going to be on the 6th fret of the D, and then index is going to be on the 2nd fret of the G, and then the E and the B are open. And then to this A, index finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, pinky is going to be on the 4th fret of the G, open B, and let that middle finger grab that 2nd fret of the high E, grab that little F sharp there. Just kind of grab it and pull it off. And then C sharp minor. And then, so your index finger and pinky are going to stay right where they're at, and your ring finger is going to hit the 4th fret of the A. So index on the 2nd fret of the D, pinky on the 4th fret of the G, ring finger 4th fret of the A. And just like we grabbed that C sharp for that the A add 9, we're going to grab this C sharp here on the 2nd fret of the B. Or both of them, I don't care. This is our song, we're making this up, right? And then we're going to go to a B, just B5, so index finger on the 2nd fret of the A, ring on the 4th fret of the D, pinky on the 4th fret of the G, open B. And if you want to, maybe take your pinky off and put your middle finger down here on the 2nd fret of the G string to make it a B7, and the whole thing could sound like this. Pretty little exercise. I'm going to give you one more and we'll wrap this thing up. This is also another good one to have just in your hands if you're playing a typical 1, 5, 6, 4 sort of progression. There's a lot of grips in here that would be useful for this. So this is that F add 9 again. This is going to be just like we did a second ago, ring finger on the 3rd fret of the D, middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G, index on the 1st fret of the B, and then pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E to this C add 9. How we started the whole thing off. Middle finger on the 3rd fret of the A, index finger of 2nd fret of the D, open G, and then this time we're going to do our ring finger on the 3rd fret of the B, pinky on the 3rd fret of the high E, and then to this G right here. This is, again, how we started off this whole thing with this guy. This is going to be ring finger on the 3rd fret of the low E, on making that G, and then your index finger on the 2nd fret of the A, open D, and then your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G, and then pinky on the 3rd fret of the B. And then your A, we're going to do an A minor 9 here. We've talked about this in other chords and coffees, but here it comes again. This is going to be middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D, pinky on the 4th fret of the G, index finger on the 1st fret of the B. And then if you want, I would put the high E open, but you can also put your middle finger, or excuse me, your ring finger on the 3rd fret of the high E. Makes it a little more middle earthy. I like it. And then we're going to come up here. Think of this as this C add 9 with the bar on it. This is going to be our F add 9 up here. This is going to be ring finger on the 8th fret of the A, middle finger is going to be on the 7th fret of the D, and then I'm kind of basically barring on the G all the way to the high E of the 5th fret, but I'm putting my pinky on the B string of the 8th fret. And then I'll slide that down to this E flat add 9, which is basically going to be the exact same grip, just built off of the 6th fret, so ring on the 6th fret of the A string, middle on the 5th fret of the D, little bar on the G, the B, and the high E, and then your pinky is on the 3rd fret, by the way, that was where that little bar is at, and then your pinky is going to be on the 6th fret of the B, right? And then I might come down to this B flat sus2 here. There's a whole lesson on sus chords in the Chords and Coffee realm. You should check that out too. And that's just going to be on the 1st fret. There's going to be a bar right here straight across on the 1st fret from A to the high E, and then ring finger on the 3rd fret of the D, pinky on the 3rd fret of the G, and then back to that C Add9, right? And I'll use that as the outro music. Is this helpful? Do you like this sort of stuff? If you do, please comment below. You know, your comments, your suggestions fuel the fire of these Chords and Coffees. This is a free guitar lesson. I hope you've hit the subscribe button. I hope you enjoy this, and most importantly, I hope you're living life the very best you can with the guitar in your hand. I just realized I hadn't even poured my coffee, so drink a cup of coffee for your old buddy Nate. Have a wonderful Saturday, and we'll see you next week, 9 a.m. Central Time, for another Chords and Coffee.